Okay, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Let's make a start. So we're going to be talking about Azure Communication Services in this particular session. I've called it a developer's guide. I want to take you through all sorts of things that I've found out about using Azure Communication Services and specifically show you some of it. And we're going to look in particular at the Teams interop part as well, because that's quite interesting. I really want to show you some code. I want to show you some demos. I want us to join a Teams meeting, and I want to do all of that whilst I stay in this Teams meeting and not get booted out as well. So I think I've got a good demo set planned, but this is a bit of a disclaimer that this stuff is kind of complicated to show jumping in and out of Teams meetings when you're in a Teams meeting, but we'll see how it goes. I think it should be fine. Okay, so, oh, sorry, don't do that. Right, so the agenda. So we're going to go through some slides first, just to kind of level set with what Azure Communication Services is. But I'm going to intersperse. There are some demos coming. There is some code coming. So don't think it's all slides. Absolutely not true. But I do need to kind of level set just a little bit with you about what ACS is and what you can do with it, and what it's used for and all the rest of it. So good. So let's do this then. So first of all, this is going to be the agenda, kind of as it stands: some slides, some demos, some slides, some demos, and some more slides. So let's get into the slides. And in a minute, I'll do it in a minute. Anyway, right, so let's start at the top. Azure Communication Services, what is it? Well, fundamentally, it's a platform for developers, and the intent is it's a platform to allow developers to add communication services. So what does that mean? It means things like voice over IP, it means things like SMS, it means things like chat. You can do all these things already with other services. Twilio is the one that kind of springs to mind quite a lot for these types of services. This is Microsoft saying you can do it, and you can do it in Azure. So if you're already using Azure for other things in your enterprise, in your organization, this is not a different company. This is someone you can trust. The Microsoft security, the compliance, the governance, and all the rest of it. And the billing is all done through Azure as well. So that's what ACS fundamentally is. It's a way for developers to add communication to their applications. It's not another product. It's not a Microsoft Teams compete. It's not an end user thing. It's a platform for developers to use. And that really comes across in like how you actually access it. So what is Azure Communication Services? Fundamentally, it's a thing that you add in your Microsoft Azure instance. So you go to a resource group, whatever, you create a new thing. That thing is a communication services instance, and you get a portal that looks just like this. And we'll go through like this in a bit and show you later as well. But fundamentally, that's what it is. This gives you access to the portal. And there's not an awful lot you actually do in this portal in Azure, really, but it gives you access to access keys. And then you use those access keys in your code to access the platform. What can I do in Azure Communication Services? Well, I've already said it's a platform for voice over IP calls. What does that mean? It means that you can use WebRTC functionality. So in browser, so desktop browsers, mobile browsers, you can use voice over IP. You can make and receive calls. They can be audio calls, they can be video calls. You can do screen sharing. You can do one-to-one, you can do group. So you've got lots and lots of functionality there. That's not Teams, that's just making calls on a different platform, but it's Azure based, okay? The support for chat, so you can do chat-only conversations, you can do long-lived conversations. You can do that via SMS as well if you want to, or you can do it with web chat, or you can do it with a combination of both. A long-lived conversation, like an example, might be like a delivery message that you get on SMS saying, you know, your package is ready, we're going to deliver it tomorrow. You can reply to that and say, actually, don't deliver it tomorrow, deliver it next Wednesday, deliver it to a different location, whatever else it is. The system, if you like, has that concept of a conversation ID, of a management of a long-lived conversation, the statefulness of a conversation to make your code easier. And coming back to that voice over IP platform, you've got some outbound calling capabilities as well via PSTN. So that's the ability to kind of call out via PSTN, not incoming at this point. It's just outbound at this point, and that's via PSTN. So that's interesting because then you've got voice over IP conversations happening that you can then add PSTN people to. Okay. So what's interesting about that is that it's Microsoft provided numbers only.
Tom?
Oh, yeah, hi, yes.
I think I need to interrupt just shortly because your scene does not show in full screen mode, so it's just cut on the edges.
Okay, so I'm going to guess that's probably Teams doing that. So let me do this. So this might get a bit Inception, but I'll let you choose how you want to view this. So I'm going to share my screen as well, and you'll get my video and the screen showing the same thing, but hopefully like you can choose which one makes the most sense to you.
Yes, so the shared one looks much better. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. I might jump out of doing this when I come to the demo. So just so everyone on the call kind of understands, I'm going through OBS and I'm doing that because I want to show you some things on both this machine, but also another machine. So I kind of need to use OBS to show all that stuff together. So I might jump out and hopefully Teams will be all right with it, but we'll keep going. Okay, so outbound calling via PSTN, and that's Microsoft provided numbers only. That's different from your Microsoft phone system numbers. It's a different thing. It's kind of confusing, but it is. It's not those Microsoft phone system numbers. It's extra numbers that you provision in the Azure portal. Right now, that's US only numbers, but more apparently coming soon. And then also coming soon is support for integration with on-premise equipment. Okay. And of course, my camera's died. Not a problem. We'll carry on anyway. So this is quite an important point I do want to get across, actually. There's a lot of confusion when it comes to ACS and whether ACS is Teams, whether ACS is built on Teams, whether Teams is built on ACS, and what that kind of model all looks like. So this is the best illustration I can find to tie it all together. And you've got Azure Communication Services, which under the hood is the kind of substrate. It's the core part of the system. It's the thing that Microsoft have built as a communication platform. It's sometimes called IC3, sometimes called Skype Core. Like it's that fundamental like substrate, if you like, of communication. Teams is built on top of that, and all the calling functionality in Teams comes from that kind of substrate platform. What Microsoft have done with ACS is open that up and abstract it and make it available to developers as something developers can use. And that's why it's kind of so powerful, because you're using that same platform that Teams uses under the hood. Like it's different from Teams, but it's using that same platform. So your custom application can fit on the far right-hand side of that container and be the thing that also talks into Azure Communication Services. Dynamics are doing exactly the same thing with their customer service platform, so yeah, lots and lots of kind of opportunities there to kind of build on that substrate and make the use of that kind of powerful platform. All right, so I said that Teams is built on Azure Communication Services, and also developers can build solutions that also build on Azure Communication Services. So it's a really natural question now. What about if you wanted to combine those two things together and have something in Azure Communication Services talk to something in Microsoft Teams? Can you do that? Yes, you can, with some kind of caveats. So it's called Azure Communication Services Teams Interop. Currently, it's in public preview and it's not turned on everywhere. You have to opt into it at a tenant level. So there's no automation for that. You have to go and fill in a Microsoft form at the moment. What this allows you to do specifically is allow an ACS client to join a Teams meeting as a guest. Okay, I'm going to show you that in a minute. We're going to do it together, but that's what the interop is today. It's having an ACS client running in a web page or on a mobile browser or wherever else on whatever mobile application, joining a Teams meeting as a guest user. Very similar to how you might use the Teams web experience to join as a guest user. What that gives you, though, that's different is full control, full ACS control on the layouts and the visuals. So you have that kind of customization for the laying out the page, that your users are seeing exactly how you want it. You don't have to have the same Microsoft Teams layout that the web join has. You literally have full control, and I'll show you that in a minute. It's worth pointing out, though, that this is a one-way integration. There's no ability for a Teams user to join an ACS meeting, and there's no there's no kind of there's no peer-to-peer integration or anything like that. And interestingly, but crucially, there's no presence integration, which sounds obvious, but actually it's a bit of a gotcha if you think about it. If you're making a solution where you've got people using ACS to join Teams meetings, don't expect that their Teams presence is going to change. If they're also using Microsoft Teams as well, it's not going to change. It's going to stay green because they're not in a Teams call, they're in an ACS call. So they are susceptible to receive incoming calls as well. So that's just a kind of a thing to be aware of, a bit of a gotcha. Not to say you couldn't do something yourself, but that's sort of the functionality as it is today. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how it actually works from the kind of development standpoint. There's sort of two parts to it. There's a back-end code and a front-end code part. So the back-end code, the fundamentals of the back-end part are providing access to use the system. And the thinking here, the architecture, is that as a developer, you're probably the best person to decide who can make and use those Azure Communication Services like capabilities in your application. So the job of issuing access tokens to use ACS functionality in your application is down to you. And that's done in two parts. It's done with an identity part and an access token part. So your code generates an ACS identity. And that's similar, that's kind of really lightweight. So it's not a big AD identity or anything like that. It's not tied to AD at all, actually, completely separate. It's a very lightweight identity. It's just an ID, basically, but it identifies every single ACS user. And you've got some options. You can either just generate these dynamically as and when you need them and throw them away when you're done. There's no information, if you like, tied to them as a user. Or you could take the ID and you could make it long-lived and you could store it in your database alongside other information you have about a user. So let's say you have a portal that users log into. So you've already got a concept of a user. You've already got a concept of information about a user and details about a user. You could generate a ACS identity and store it in that same database, and then it's always there. You haven't got to generate it each time. That gives you then the benefit of tracking, how much users are using that system and whatever else it is over time. So you've got that to generate a identity. The next thing you need to do is generate an access token to actually use ACS. Okay, and when you generate that access token, you provide a specific scope. And so the scopes you can provide right now are the ability to do SMS and chat, or the ability to do voice over IP, or the ability to do both. And so you specify what it is your user should be allowed to do when you generate that access token, and you go and issue the access token. And from the back-end part of things, that's kind of it. And it's entirely up to you how you do that. So you can put that inside your API, you can put it inside your backend system somewhere and just deliver it, to a web page along with other information about users. You can gate it, you can provide authentication, you can only give it to users in the premium club, whatever else it is. That's all your decision. The specific bits of code to call, I'll show you in a minute. The specific bits of code to call to go and generate an identity and generate an access token, and then it's on you to do that and give it out to your front end code to use. Everything else after that is then front-end code. So that's JavaScript, it's native mobile code, whatever it is, that does the actual work of connecting to either another ACS user or a group using the access token or joining a Teams meeting. And the actual control of what the experience looks like, that's all on your code as well. That's front-end JavaScript code doing all that work as well. All right, so the back-end bit. You've got a couple of options for how you do that. You could do it in .NET. You can do it in JavaScript. You can do it by Node if you want to. You can do it in Python, or you could just call the APIs directly. You've got lots of different choices. The easiest way, probably, I mean, everything's relative, isn't it? Like for me, I'm kind of a .NET developer, so it's easier for me to go down the .NET route, and that's what I'm going to show you. You can either use .NET Add, or you can use install package to get it from NuGet. There's a Azure.communication.identity package. You add that, then it's literally 1 or 2 lines of code to get to where you need, and I'll show you that in a minute. The functionality. So we've talked about generating identities, so you can create and delete identities. You can issue the access tokens. You can actually refresh and revoke access tokens as well. And then what's actually quite useful is that there is a specific call to go and create an identity and also issue an access token all in one go, because I guess the ACS folks realize that actually quite a lot of the time that's what you want to do. Really, you just want to go and create the identity, issue the access token, and be done. So that's kind of the functionality exposed, if you like, for the backend part of things. Right, let's show you that. So I'm going to, let's keep presenting this screen in Teams for now. I think that should be fine, but I'm going to sit down so I can type and show you stuff, and hopefully you won't notice too much. So let me show you this first. So I'm going to show you what it's like to issue the identity and the access token. I'm going to use an Azure function. You don't have to use an Azure function if you don't want to. You could do this in your API. You could do this in a console application if you wanted to. You could probably do it in PowerShell if you could do the HTTP calls. I'm just going to show you it in Azure Functions because it's just slightly easier. So I've got a function here, and let me just show you what the code is, because it's actually really simple. The ACS integration, if you like, and the packages they've done really make it very easy. So I've already imported this Azure Communication Identity package, so I can use it here. And this is a really simple function, as you can see. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a client, which is a new communication identity client. And this takes as its parameter the ACS connection string. Okay, what's the ACS connection string? I hear you shout. Let me try and show you real quick. So let me put this over here. Let me show you so this is where I took the screenshot from, the communication services instance that you can create just by going to create new communication services instance. And you do this, and this is where you provision the phone numbers. It's where you can get some metrics and some logs, but you can't do an awful lot in here. The key thing that you do in here is go to keys, and you grab these keys, these connection strings that I'm now going to have to go and regenerate, but that's fine. So you take this connection string right here. So I'm going to take that connection string and I put it inside an environment variable. You could just paste it in here if you wanted to. That creates the client. And then do you remember me saying that there was a single command that you could call to generate a identity and also issue the token? That's what I'm doing here. I'm calling create user and token async. I'm doing it all in one go, and I'm passing this scope to say voice over IP is the scope I want to give for this access token. So anyone with this access token can use the voice over IP capabilities of ACS, not the chat part, not any other part of it, just the voice over IP part. And any actions they do will be tied to the specific user that got created as part of this. Just test run this so you can kind of see what it looks like. So calling this is going to generate a new client and then create the user and token, and this is what gets returned. So you can see in here. So this is the identity of the user, and that's what I mean by saying it's a lightweight identity. This is the only thing that's really that you get about this user. It's just the ID. If you want to, in your code, in your API, if you want to ascribe that to a particular person, an individual, whatever else it is, store it in a database, you can do. This will live for as long as you want it to, or you can just throw it away and get another one. Doesn't really matter. It's not tied to anything. And then this access token here is the access token that gives you access for this user to go and use ACS. By default, it's got a 24-hour expiry on it. I can go and call code to revoke this if I want to, or renew it as well for another 24 hours. So in terms of backend, it is as simple as that. You don't have to do it this way. You could do it lots of different ways, but this is like a nice, easy way to show you. It's really easy to create something. And now, because this is an Azure function, I can go and get the function URL. I can call that in my code to go and get an access token anytime I want to. And we're going to use that in a minute to kind of show you how to use the front end part of things. But I want to show you this bit first. This is the back end part of things that you need to do. And you don't do this, like the idea is you don't do this in your client code because it's too risky, because it exposes the access string, the connection string, if you like, to your backend ACS instance. And you don't want to expose that out to clients. You want to hide that behind an API somewhere. So this is why this is backend code. but the purpose of this is to generate the access tokens that you then go forward and use in your front end. Okay, so that's the back end part of things sorted, and we'll use that in a minute. Let's look to the front end part of things. Okay, so front end development. So there are some libraries that you can use if you want to. You don't have to. There's libraries for the web. There's React components you can use, and there's NPM packages you can use. If you're building things for iOS and Android, there's native code you can use. So there's so for iOS, there's some Swift code, there's some Objective-C stuff. For Android, I can't remember what Android uses, but anyway, whatever their native is, it uses that. And there's lots of samples and examples as well. Lots of them are around using React, but they don't have to be. I've deliberately tried not to do any React in the samples I'm about to show you. So if you don't have any React knowledge, it's fine. If you do have React knowledge, you'll be shouting at the screen, like, why are you doing it like this? But the reason is, like, I'm just trying to like baseline and make sure everyone can kind of get the same experience. What's worth saying is that there are some components to make building the UIs easier, but they're coming, they're not here now. So the idea is, right now, you build everything up yourself, you build the controls up yourself, and you make calls to the system, if you like, to get stuff done. So if you want a mute button, let's say, you'd create the button and you'd hook it up to the code, and the code you'd call, it would be something like call.mute, right? What is coming is some composite components and some base components. So base components would be like a mute button, a video button, the video render, like a participant, like representation of a participant. And then also some composite components, so like a participant list, an entire conversation window, like a chat window, whatever. Those things are coming, but you don't need to use them if you don't want to. When they do come, you'll still be able to go and build all your stuff from scratch if you want to. And that's really nice because it gives people the flexibility that, you know, has previously been kind of hard to do. This gives you like the full flexibility, if you like. If you want to build something from scratch that looks completely different from Teams or from anything else that's gone before it, you can totally do that. If you want to just get something going really quickly, you could just drop in these UI components and get going if you want to. So kind of a bit of a plug, I suppose. I've done a whole bunch of code samples on just getting started with building things in the front end in ACS. You can go to that learnacs.dev link. I'm going to use parts of one of them in a minute to go through, and we'll talk about exactly what I'm building up. But I just want to let you know that sort of repository is there. They're all in GitHub. They're all free. They sort of focus on different parts of using ACS to get stuff going. Okay, that's enough slides and enough kind of waffling. I wanted to spend as much time as possible on doing this demo and just showing you, like really showing you the code and showing you what the code looks like. Okay, I'm going to stay presenting my screen for as long as I possibly can. Let's look at this. So I've deliberately made some choices here in showing you the code. So I'm deliberately doing everything in Notepad, just to kind of, not because I like building things in Notepad. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But I didn't want to be like, you have to use Visual Studio or you have to use Visual Studio Code or anything like that. Like if you want to build it in Notepad, build it in Notepad. If you want to use React, please use React. I like React. I'm not using it for this because I don't want to alienate anyone who's not using React. This is pure JavaScript stuff. You can do it all in JavaScript if you want to. So I've got two files going on here. If you're not familiar with these files and what they do, don't worry about it. I think you can probably still follow along. So there's an HTML file here, which is, we're going to build a web page, and what we're going to do is build a web page that joins a Microsoft Teams meeting using that Teams interop functionality. So we're going to, on this page, we need to connect to our ACS instance. We need to go and get an access token first and an identity. We need to go and create a call. We need to go and join a Teams meeting. Once we're in that Teams meeting, we're going to show some video. We're going to send our video as well and our microphone. We're going to render any video that's also being shown in the meeting. So we're going to build like a functional but pretty basic looking Microsoft Teams client in our web browser. Okay, that's the plan. So this HTML part of the page here, I'm going to really quickly just whiz through so you can see roughly what we're talking about. I've got a thing that just tells me what the call state is and gives me somewhere to update the call state. I've got an input for the Teams join URL. So that is literally the same join URL that if you go and create a Teams meeting today, you go and get the join link, you get something that's like teams.microsoft.com/whatever. You give that to ACS to go and join a meeting. It's that simple. Okay, so this is kind of, there's no like IDs to figure out. There's no, you don't have to go and create the team in any special way. You can take any Microsoft team right now. You can take the join URL from it. You can put it in here and you can join it using ACS. I've got an input here for your name. I've got some buttons to go and connect and disconnect. And down here, I've got some containers that we're going to populate in a minute. So I've got a kind of participant one. We're going to fill up with any participants that are in the meeting. And then I've got here a container div for the, what I'm calling the self video. So that's like your vanity feed. It's the video that gets shown. Yeah, when you're like your own video, right? The one that gets sort of presented out. All right, so that's kind of like the HTML part of things. Let's go and look at what the backend part of things looks like. So click. So right, I'm going to go through this a little bit slower because there's a lot to kind of, there's actually not a lot to take in. That's kind of the interesting part. So all of that functionality I talked about is 150 lines, okay? And so there's not loads in here, but actually for the functionality it gives you, it's pretty amazing. So a load of importing, and I'm importing from this Azure Communication Calling and Azure Communication Common, both NPM packages you can go and get. These are just hooking up the HTML elements to some variables. Right, what's the interesting part? So the interesting part is this init function that runs when the page loads. The very first thing it does is it goes and gets the access token. How does it get the access token? It goes and calls that Azure function we just talked through. That's all it does. It calls that Azure function, it gets the response. And we know from looking at it before, that response contains our access token credential that we can use. So that's great. That gives us a token right here in JSON. So we can pull that out as the token. And we then create a new Azure Communication Token credential using that token, right? And that token credential is what you then pass when you go and create a call. Right. If you've done anything with WebRTC and kind of that kind of web-based programming, if you like, of media, you'll kind of be a bit familiar with this, but also it's an abstraction. If you've done nothing with WebRTC, don't worry about it. This is, I think, probably nicer than using WebRTC, right? This is built into the Azure Communication Services package that you get, is a whole abstraction around WebRTC. That means you don't really have to understand how WebRTC works. And this works on mobile, and it works on desktop, it works on kind of iPads, it works anywhere. You've got this functionality to do things like call client get device manager. And then device manager lets you get the cameras, you can get microphones, you can get speakers, you get that listing of all the devices that is important. Normally in a kind of application, what you probably do is give that list to the user and have them choose a camera, have them choose a microphone, whatever else it is. I'm completely cheating and I'm saying just pick the first one. So pick the first webcam that you find, let's use that one. And then I'm making a local video stream out of that camera basically. So I'm saying, and that's going to be the local video stream that we show on the screen, but also that we send to the call to say, like, this is the camera to use when you're making that call. Use this camera because that's the camera I want to like send out. Okay, I'm preloading the Teams meeting so I don't have to type it in every time because it's really long. So you can kind of ignore that. That's really just for the demo. And then these are the handlers for the button clicks. So when you click the connect button, what is going to happen? So first of all, I'm going to create a display name based on the input of the display name. If it's there, if it's not, just make something up. And then this call agent here, you create a call agent. It's just the structure, if you like, of how you build a call up in Azure Communication Services. You create a call agent first, and then you join a call, and then that gives you back a handle to the call. The idea being that you could actually join multiple calls from the same call agent if you wanted to. You could be in and out of calls. You could have potentially you could have joined more than one call at the same time. So you've got lots of different options. But you start off by creating a call agent, and then you join the call. The way you join the call, you provide a destination. So the structure of what this destination actually looks like varies slightly depending on what it is you're joining. If you're joining a Teams meeting, it looks like this: meeting link. This is Jason, meeting link, and then the actual URL of wherever it is you're going. If you're joining a group call or a peer-to-peer, it looks slightly different. In the call options, I'm passing that local video stream to tell the call that I want to present that video stream. And then this is the kind of line that makes everything work, that call agent.join destination. And that will go and join you to that Microsoft Teams call. You can then subscribe to state changes, and you kind of need to if you want to do anything interesting. So this is a really basic one. So I'm just on the state change, and all I'm doing is updating the state so we can see the state of the call as it goes through the system. And I'll show you that in a minute. And then this one on remote participants updated. So one thing to really remember is that all of the Azure Communication Services stuff is quite stateless and it's quite asynchronous, because things happen all the time. Things happen out of order. People join and leave all the time, right? So you need to have events going on for what goes on. So if you were to just join this call straight away and then immediately get like the list of participants, which you can do with like call.participant list, it's probably going to be empty, okay? Because what you need to do is subscribe for it changing and then react to state changes. And if you do that, you'll always keep up to date, and you'll get it when it's sort of loaded and all the rest of it. What you actually do with that is kind of up to you. Now, this is where, if you're a React developer, there's definitely better ways of doing this. What I'm doing here is not production ready and it's horrible, but it's actually quite simple for the demo. Basically, what I'm doing is every time anything about the remote participants is updated, I'm just going to kind of clear the whole list of participants and rebuild it from scratch. Okay, so what I'm doing for every remote participant that gets found in the meeting, I'm going to subscribe to changes to their display name, to their mute state, and whether or not a video stream changes. And on each of those, I'm just going to refresh the whole thing. And refreshing the whole thing, let me just come down, I'll jump back up again. It's just a case of clearing that container, this one over here, clearing this container, and then setting up the remote participants again. And so let's just go through this real quick. So setting up the participants, all I'm doing really is iterating through the participant objects, pulling out the display name, looking for the video streams. Video streams can be video, they can also be screen sharing. So you just need to like step through and look what you're looking for. And then if that video stream is available, I'm going to render it. Rendering it is not as complicated as it sounds, because you can use the Azure Communication Services stuff to help you there. You create a renderer, you create a view, you find where you want to put it. I'm creating one in this case. I'm setting the width, you apply it to a child, and you add it to the container, and that's it. So yeah, there's stuff to look at and stuff to work through, but it's not loads and loads of effort. It's not loads and loads of detail. You've got a disconnect button here, again, just as call.hangup. So what I'm trying to get to you, the point I'm trying to get across, I guess, is I'm not trying to make, hopefully it's not really complicated. I know it's not like you're not going to pick it all up and be like, oh yeah, I can go and write my own ACS client now. That's not kind of the point. The point is to show you it's not horrendously complicated, and is something you can do relatively straightforward. So this is all good fun, but does it actually work? So this is what that page looks like. Let me just refresh so you can see. It's going to do that in it, which is to go and get the. In fact, I can probably show you. Let's do this and refresh. You can see it going to make its get token call. It's get token call here to my Azure function. That gets the response back with all the access token stuff in it. I've preloaded this to go and join the meeting. And currently there's no participants, there's no self-video stuff. Okay, so I'm going to do something which hopefully doesn't break it for everybody. I'm going to stop presenting this. Okay, I'm going to go back to my video. I'm aware it might not be like the full screen stuff, but hopefully you can still carry on and watch. The reason I'm doing that, by the way, is because what I want to do is join this to a Teams meeting. But if I go and join, and I want to show you it with the Teams client as well, so everybody can see it's actually joining a Teams meeting, you can see the user. And I can't really do that on this machine by itself because we're currently in a Teams meeting talking to each other, right? So I need to go and do something else. So what I'm going to do is this. So this is my other machine. This is my laptop machine. And this is just got the Teams client on it. So I'm going to join that same meeting, but just regular Teams client. And I'm just doing on a different one just so you can see, because it won't, otherwise it'll not work. So I'm going to join this meeting. There's going to be no one in the meeting. Let's get the participant list up. Okay, so you can see empty meeting, just me over here. Okay, so that's good. Let's go back to this computer. And what I can do now is connect with video. So that's going to run through all the stuff I just spoke about, connecting to that meeting. It's going to show my video feed here, this one, and then it's going to render the video feed of anybody else that's in the meeting. If I go and split screen so you can see both machines now, you can see the Teams meeting over here. Let's full screen that. This person has joined as anonymous user because I forgot to put the name in. And you can see the video feed from both streams, from both sides being rendered. Obviously, the layout is all over the place on the web page, but it works. That's the important thing. I didn't have to write loads and loads of code. The whole thing kind of pulled together really nicely. It's quick, it works. You can render this however you want. As more and more people come into the meeting, all this web page is going to do is just add extra layers underneath this. Now, that's interesting. If you want to be a bit participatory and do this yourself and try this yourself, this could be a fun experiment. So this whole page here that's on my local machine is also at this address right here, which I'll put in the chat. So if you want to, you could go to that page. It's preloaded with the meeting ID. You could put a name in. You're going to get funky errors if the first webcam that is in your list of webcams is not immediately available, but you could absolutely join this and you'll show up on this page. If you want to try that yourself, I put the link in the chat. Give it a go. Let me know what you think. It should work just fine, I think, because this ngrot link should take you to exactly the same place and work exactly the same. That is, in a nutshell, like how easy it is to use the Microsoft Teams interop. What we did, 150 roughly lines of JavaScript code. Quite a lot of that is for the demo. Quite a lot of that you can make go away. What we're doing here, though, is come back to the screen. What we're doing here is done without plugins. It's done without any kind of special browsers. It would work on a mobile device. It would work, on the web. It kind of work anywhere. Here comes some other person. Hello. It works. So you've got lots and lots of options for kind of what you do next with this. Like this is kind of a basic option. You could do screen sharing. Let me quickly jump to this to show you. This here is where we get the video stream. If you change this list when you're looking in video streams, if you change that to screen sharing, you're going to get the screen share. Like it's as easy as that, right? And then you're just rendering it just like any other screen share. If you wanted to have the video next to the screen share, Teams doesn't really let you do that, but like as a complete side-by-side 50-50, you could totally do that if you wanted to. If you wanted to just show all the videos in like a 3x3 or a 9x9, like you do whatever you want. You've got loads and loads of different options for how you make this look. Okay, so loads and loads of different opportunities, I guess, it opens up for building out. Hey, Adam, building out different kind of clients, different experiences, lots of different things you can do. So lots of fun. All right, let's jump back to the slides for a second. A couple more things I do want to just tell you about real quick. The first one, well, this one really is kind of worth just getting over. So completely separate to everything we've just spoken about. If you're really into Azure Event Grid, if you've got an architecture model that already supports it, you'll probably want to go down this route. Basically, the functionality in Azure Communication Services supports Event Grid, meaning that you can push incoming things to Azure Functions or a service bus queue and make a completely serverless architecture. So right now, it's worth saying that's only for chat and SMS. It's not for incoming voice over IP calls. But if you're building out a model, you could definitely do something like this in the screenshot where you've got I need to go back and show my screen really for everyone to see it properly. I'll do that now. So where you've got a chat message being received, it can get picked up by an Azure function and pumped directly and into your service bus queue. Deal with it immediately in a serverless way. You don't have to kind of have a long-lived big API subscribing to changes or anything like that. So lots of different options for doing that. Right now, like I say, it is just for the chat and SMS part of things. I do see them building that over time, I think. No inside knowledge particularly, but like it feels like a place that makes sense, right? Yeah, so that's worth looking at if you're already in that kind of world, or you want to build something that's entirely serverless as well. And that can be good for building, I don't know, like a system where you want to, completely separate to what we've just demoed, which is voice over IP based and Microsoft Teams interop based. If you were going to build a system that allowed people to SMS in with their questions, and then you would reply with a bot or like some code, or fire it off to a user and go back and build a system up like that. So lots of different options for doing that. Okay, we're at time. Definitely time for questions. Aware it was a bit of a mad gallop through. I wanted to level set with what you could do with ACS. I wanted to level set a bit on the functionality that is available to you, and I wanted to show you actually what you could do, because I think a lot of the time we kind of talk through, you know, the capabilities, but we don't always kind of show exactly what's possible. And so I wanted to do that, even though it's kind of like a bit of a kind of setup demo thing, is still quite useful, I think, to show the kinds of things that is possible, and the kind of things that you can do. So hopefully that's been useful. I'm going to stop talking now for questions. Thanks very much for attending. Don't forget to do the rate my session thing, and enjoy the rest of Teams Nation.